when there's crisis in a person, in the collective, in the world, things get activated at a deep level also. So when things are falling apart, there are other things deep within that are stirring and waking up. And so one way that this has been described is by Carl Jung in depth psychology, where he, I think, is the first one to use the term wounded healer. And so the wounded healer is someone who has been wounded, who has healed to some degree, and therefore has access to healing energy that can benefit others. And so the blessings, the curses, the traumas, the eros woundings, they're all part of being born in this world. And the reason I say that is they're part of all the ancient stories. And the idea isn't there should be a different world where that doesn't happen. I think the idea is there should be a different world where there's greater opportunity to heal and recover and therefore live more fully, that there should be more support and understanding of how everyone is wounded and how we each need the opportunity to recognize and find ways of healing ourselves and then participate in what needs to happen now, which is a healing of the whole world. I mean, humans have done a lot of damage to the earth, to nature, to what we call the world. And it's like our wounding. It's like our spellbound misuse of the opportunity to interact with nature and all that kind of thing. And if we could wound in the ways that now are evident and deep and dangerous, if we can do that wounding based on the idea of wounds and blessings and awakenings, we should be able to awaken and contribute to the healing of those things that have been done by humanity. Not that we necessarily did it personally, but we are part of humanity and we're part of the collective. And when a person awakens to their genuine self or taps into their genius or finds their aim in life, it's not just for them and about them. It actually affects other people, and it also can affect the world. Heal the soul, heal the world. Jung, in his great way of opening up the unconscious, as he called it, and finding the archetypes that he called, underneath is the personal unconscious, then there's the collective unconscious, which goes all the way back through all the history of the world and back to ancient times and back to the origins. And in those origins were these archetypes. And so at this point, when we're going through a collapse of structure in the world, the end of an era, all kinds of ways to talk about it, the breaking down is connected like a breaking down a personal spell where it can feel like life is falling apart, and actually we're getting closer to those things underneath the spell. Well, that's happening collectively too. And so what happens is certain archetypes get activated, and there's several of them that are really important and clear right now. One is the archetype of creation. As everything falls apart, creation is ready to start again. That's really helpful. Another is the archetype of the deep self. I started out at the beginning mentioning this is about the little self and the deeper, greater self. And so as the world gets more endangered in a certain way, the deeper self is closer to the surface. That's a helpful idea. And another one is that the archetype of the wounded healer is activated. You could say that we're all in a liminal, paradoxical space where wounding of all kinds intensifies, but also where healing of all kinds becomes more possible. The time of crisis is when it becomes necessary and more possible to break through the spell or to seek healing. So the collapsing of the world stimulates archetypal potentials for wholeness and renewal. Just what we were talking about. When the spell is broken, there's a renewal of vital energy and there's a wholeness, more wholeness present in life. So what happens on the personal level also happens on the collective level, and we happen to be in one of those collective collapses that's also a renewal. So the wounded healer archetype is invoked where the deep wounds in life rise to the surface and can become recognized and faced. And so collectively now, it's hard to not notice all these things that are coming back. The kind of all of the racial hatred, division, divisiveness, and violence towards other people is coming back. The attacks on the feminine, on the mother. This thing about abortion and every fetus has to be carried and all, that's a spell. That's a collective spell based on radical misunderstanding of the womb itself, of the nature of femininity, of the feminine, and of the nature of creation and birth. It's really a spell, and you can see it in the exaggerated energies and intensities of the people who insist on controlling the bodies and the womb of women. Imagine how that connects to their mother spell. But mainly I'm after this. So the wounded healer archetype is invoked. And it enters us because we are all wounded and all potential healers. And it's not as if we have to do it all by ourselves. This kind of energy, we go partway into the woundedness, and this archetype is activated. The archetypes are, the source of original ideas, images, and energies. And so they become more accessible. It's not that we have to figure this out and become perfect people. It's we become vehicles for the energies of healing by accepting the fact that we're vehicles for the effects of wounding. So our paradoxical, divided situation parallels the suffering and healing in the myth of Chiron. I think this is where Jung got the wounded healer from, is the story of Chiron. Chiron is a Greek myth. Chiron's a figure who is born of a god and a human mother, and he turns out to be part human and part horse. You've seen pictures of centaurs. He's one of those, and so he's a creature of opposites. He's part human and part horse. He's also part human and part divine because his father's a god. And so that turns out to be, to depict our own contrariness. We're not just part instinct and part spirit, we're also part human and part divine. This genius that I talk about a lot is the spark of the divine in each person. And so we are like Chiron in that sense, and Chiron represents that duality or opposition or pairing in us, paradox. And so Chiron also stands for the original wound, which keeps coming back because Chiron is rejected by both mother and father. The mother sees this half human, half horse character and says, I'm not up for this. And the father says, he looks like partly an animal. I don't want to be part of that. And so he's completely abandoned at birth. And so there he represents the kind of abandonments or abandonment wounds we each suffered in our own way. And then this wound keeps coming back because Chiron in astrology keeps coming back through the natal chart of people. Chiron was not even recognized until 19 something. And then they realized, it keeps coming back and it comes back in a certain way. I'm not going to do the astrology. But the main thing is the Chiron wounded healer stuff keep trying to come back through our lives. We're here to recognize the wounds and heal them and then do it again and then do it again and get better and better at it. And so there's an implication that the wound doesn't completely heal. We don't then heal and then we're okay. Like the wise people and the elders and tribal groups are not all healed. They're just more aware of the wounds. So Chiron can represent each person's early life wounds and also represent how attending to those wounds gives that person their own gift of healing. So I love the idea in Native American traditions that all the elders are healers. Some of them are literally healers, but all of them are healers. That is to say, when we live into the wisdom that's already inside us, when we find the worthy qualities that are the nature of us, and we find our gifts behind our wounds, that makes us able to see, empathize with, sympathize with the wounds of others, and the next thing, we are helping to heal without any big deal. We don't have to hang a sign out. We're just walking the path of the healers, the wounded healers. And right now, that's what people need, and right now, that's what the world needs. Carl Jung saw this coming, in a sense. So myths of the wounded healer involve awakening to our capacity to heal, but also to be in darkness and not knowing. Because that's what happens to Chiron in his story. He gets wounded a second time when someone accidentally or on purpose, depending on the version of the story, strikes him in the leg or the thigh or the genitals, depending on the story, with an arrow dipped in poison, a poison that cannot be cured. And so Chiron, who becomes the greatest doctor and teacher of healing, in the world at that time, has an incurable wound. And so it suggests that we're not here to completely cure the wound. We're here to keep in connection to the wound, because it is also a womb that becomes the source of our continual capacity to imagine, to connect, and to bring healing to other situations. So a double-mindedness is required in all of this stuff. We already are doubled like Chiron. We're part human, part divine. We're part animal, part human. And the Greeks used to call that being double-minded or many-minded. And being double-minded means you don't get caught in binary things. Things don't become left or right only. Things don't become good or bad only. Things don't become male or female only. You don't get caught in the binaries, because we understand the wound and the blessing, the wound and the healing, and therefore we understand that the binary is not actually how the world works, that there are all these eros connections and all these great imaginative ways of being. And I think we're being called into that. That's the only way to survive what's going on and not get pulled into one or the other side of all the things that are being polarized. So accepting our wounded condition like Chiron does, and being receptive to what emerges from us, becomes the necessary part of the healing path. That's what Chiron, I think, shows. So ultimately, it's the guiding power of this deep self, the soul, which gives each person a sense of genuine direction in life, but also the capacity to develop the unique seeds of imagination that were given at birth, that maybe got covered up, got put under a spell, but that is really ultimately what we're here to uncover, to reveal, which means to make more conscious, so that we live with it and we live through it. In the same way that something greater than ourselves wounds us, right? Mother, father, someone bigger, greater than ourselves wound us. In the same way as that, something greater than ourselves seeks to awaken through the wound we carry. That's why we accept the wound. I mean, yeah, we go through a period of saying they shouldn't have done it, they did this and they did that, and who did it? But ultimately, that's not the point. Ultimately, the point is, what is the wound, or what was the spell aimed at? What's underneath it? Because that's what we're here to find. And when we do that, we become part of the drama through which the spirit of life itself gets revealed, through which transformation genuinely occurs. And when we transform the soul, we help transform the world.